Namaste. I welcome all of you on behalf of the Gnostic Centre. And it is the fourth webinar in the series of All Life is Yoga. And this time our focus is education. Education, bridging the gap in education through consciousness. That is the theme. I will be moderating the session today. And before we begin, I would like to briefly introduce the panelists. We have with us Monica, Dr. Monica Gupta, who is at Gargi College. She's in the field of higher education. So she's coming, her work is in a conventional background, mainstream. I'm highlighting this because a lot of time this question comes up that, okay, whatever we talk of, new ways, changes, it can be done in an alternative system, but it is not possible in the mainstream. So I'm highlighting the fact that Monica is working in a Delhi University college, very much mainstream. Similarly, Nishi Jauhar, she's heading the primary and junior section of a school in Noida. And so there again, she's also working in the mainstream, but her own background is a mix of growing up in Mirambika, alternative schooling, and then going on and doing her higher education in the conventional stream and working for many years, bringing change in schools across the country and in a few countries abroad also. So again, she's coming with that experience of both the free progress, integral education, alternative education, and of the conventional mainstream. Then we have on the other spectrum, Vikas. Vikas has grown up and studied in the ashram school, the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education, which is, I would say, the mother of alternative schools, you can say, and is now teaching there. So he has been thoroughly immersed in a different way of teaching, although for his higher education, he did go to a conventional university. And then we have Heidi, Dr. Heidi Fraser, who's joining us from USA, from California Institute of Integral Studies, which is, I would say, perhaps a mix of the conventional and the alternative, creating an alternative space within the mainstream. So what I'm looking forward to with this panel is both understanding deeper insights into what is the gap in education that they, as educationists, are facing, both at the school level and higher education level. And why do they think consciousness is something that can bridge this gap, and what they themselves have tried to do, and how the journey has been, and what can they offer to us as practical tools for taking away and applying in our own work. My own background, because I'm the moderator, I have to introduce myself also. I'm Anuradha, and I'm with the Gnostic Centre, and my journey in integral education started in '86 with Mirambika, and then I've been with the Gnostic Centre. So I grew up in conventional education, but then since '86, I've worked in the integral education setting, but also worked with a lot of schools and colleges which are mainstream. So with that, I would like to begin today's webinar. So we'll have 2 rounds of sharings on the points I raised. And this time we have kept a little more time for question answers because of the feedback we received that there should be more time for discussion and question answers. And the panelists can also ask questions to each other. Okay, so in the first round, what I would like the panelists to focus on, and they are free to do so in any order, let's keep it organic, about this theme, Mind the Gap, Bridging Education Through Consciousness. So what is the gap that they see in education, and what can create the bridge, and how can consciousness be a tool for, or the bridge. Okay, so who would like to begin?
Anuradha, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. I'm Vikas. As Anuradha mentioned, I'm a teacher and a physical educator in the ashram school. I've grown up here and I'm teaching right now. So before we begin, I just wanted to put forth two questions that every system of education has to look at before they really begin establishing the system of education. The first one is, what is the aim of human life and society? And the second one is, what is the human being made of? If we look at these two questions more deeply, then we can look at how we can actually apply the answers to this in our system of education. So in the ashram school, we have a view that the aim of human life and society is based on Sri Aurobindo's vision of an evolution of consciousness. Man at present lives in his mental consciousness, but he's capable of growing towards a supramental consciousness, which is a very far and high realization in consciousness. And education is the means to bridge this gap between these two levels of consciousness. And the second question, what is the human being made of? We firmly believe that we are a soul in evolution, firstly, and we manifest ourselves through a body, an emotional being, and the mind. And these are our instruments of consciousness, and they are what allow our soul to manifest itself in life. And it is by becoming more and more integrated with our innermost being that we can actually move towards a growth in consciousness. So I think with that, I will I'll ask the other panelists to give their introduction.
Heidi, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Anuradha and Vikas. I think for a little context, I'd like to share, maybe through my own lived experience, I have a foot in both worlds, because my younger years schooling and my undergraduate college years were totally in the public school system in the US. And then it wasn't until graduate school was I able to explore this other dimension of education through California Institute of Integral Studies. And Vikas, I appreciate those questions, because to me, I feel like that is the gap. Like, education in the mainstream sense, I feel, has strayed from those inquiries. What is the aim of human life and society? And what is the nature of the human being? And you hit the nail on the head by talking about how we're heavily mind-centered. So not to say that there's a problem with the education system, because even Aurobindo and the mother talk about the value of teaching students how to be training the instrument of the mind. But how do we create a system and a program that works towards a more balanced personality development, a more whole person? And I think for me, in my experience, another gap, and it's not just me, it goes back to thinkers like Paulo Freire. The system at present is more transactional. So he uses this term called the banking model, and it leaves the students in a position where they're receptacles to be filled with knowledge rather than active co-creators in the process. And interestingly, I felt like when you asked the questions this morning, Anuradha, I feel like the gap and the bridge is consciousness. So how do we implement that? For me, it comes down to my personal practices, because there's, even at CIS, it's not like all the time we can do this whole person thing. As you mentioned, Anuradha, it is sort of a hybrid of sorts, because we're offering degree programs at CIS that give people, graduate degrees and doctorates. So we have to help students demystify mainstream conventions in the Western educational system. And we're doing an exploration of what does a whole person education look like. So it is a bit of a hybrid. But it goes back to my own practice, my own journey, in the sense that as an educator, that's what I have to work with. I have myself. I can bring in Krishnamurti in the Education and the Significance of Life, where he's talking about systems don't get changed mysteriously, but they're transformed when there's fundamental changes in ourselves. So I think for now, I'd like to pause there and invite Monica and Nishi to chime in.
Thank you, Heidi. Nishi, why don't you go next?
Yeah, thank you, Nidhi. Again, if you ask me that, what is the gap? And when I talk to a lot of parents, and what do you want your children to get out of this education system? How do you see them 14, 15 years down the line, just when they finish their schooling? And everybody agrees that they want happy children who can realize their potential, who can solve day-to-day problems, who are confident, who are contributing meaningfully to society. And the gap that I see is the number of children reaching these aims, if at all, partially or fully, is very little. And I'm not even sure that how much does the present education system contribute, our children to be happy and successful in terms of realizing their potential, in terms of being really creative learners, being able to solve day-to-day problems or new problems that are thrown to each one of us. And I think I've always heard this, that our education system needs to change. We need to change that. But in my experience, what I've seen is that education system is not going to change unless the educators change. So any amount of change in the curriculum, in the practices, in the infrastructure, in any of these things doesn't change. And so the question is, what does it mean when we say the educators need to change? And for me, that is where the consciousness comes in. So it's not about the educators, certificates or courses or where they come from. It's a very fundamental change that needs to come about in every person who is in the education domain. And I think consciousness plays a very big, not a very big role, but that's the way we can change. Otherwise, everything else is very superficial, is what I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Nishi. Monica, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Anuradha, for inviting me to speak. I agree with all the speakers that it is the inwardization of consciousness that is missing in our education system. There are very few spaces for it, very few spaces for contemplation, spaces for silence. It's a very hurried curriculum. There is too much hurry in the system to get somewhere, to do that, to be that. There's no space, no time for stilling the being, for just simply understanding who we are, what is the purpose of our lives, where are we going. That's very fundamental existential questions that each one of us grapples while we are here on earth. So definitely I feel that consciousness is something that is critical to this relationship. And in the past 25 years that I have taught in the mainstream education system and also taught at the Gnostic Centre, what I have found is that my fascination with how to create this bridge between the two systems. And there are two ends to it. One end is, of course, it is the connection with the self. And the other end is the connection with society and societal change. How to sort of hold these both together. And there are several roadblocks, I would say, that I have run into, which are also opportunities for, in a sense, to bring transformation. And some of these I'd like to mention. One is that one is very deep structural competition. In all our institutions, it's somewhere it's pervasive almost everywhere. And it is meritocratic structures, which are based on ableism, which would celebrate success, for example, over effort. So effort is something I find, in education is something that is deeply neglected, and in a very outcome-based system. People, their personhood, their agency, their personal curriculum, over a mechanical, centralized curriculum. There is, you need space for that. You need to see the person. You need to see who the person is. And that is what is lacking in our systems. Similarly, another thing that has disturbed me, or rather it's a challenge over, recently especially, is increasing dominance of the technological over the humane. I see more and more schools, moving into coding. Children are, even as very, very young children, have started coding, AI, and a lot of time of children is just, they're just wired in, continuously. And that has sort of, it has invaded personal spaces of children. For example, learning is about play. You can't learn without play, because whatever challenges that you face at any given level of development would automatically get expressed in a certain kind of play that you do. Now these are the spaces that are getting sort of crowded out, as the technological also gets much more public money, a public, so I'm disturbed by this technological, I mean, not per se to reject technology, but the fact that how much it is invading our personal spaces, and also the wasted bodies, because the body has a direct relationship with the mind. So people, when they're continuously wired in, the nature of consciousness becomes, there's a lack of freshness to it, and the creativity also somewhere I feel it goes down. So that's one challenge. The second thing is, because in personal development, in human development, the first challenge is individualization, and then only later we move to an inner, Gnostic or an inner divine individuality. The first step itself, which is the step of individualization, is somewhere very deeply influenced by social media. There is this whole consumable selves, the culture of consumable selves with instant gratification, with a lot of fickleness, which then affects the self-esteem and makes it very fragile, for children and, even older teenagers or even young adults who are growing up in this world. That has become, I feel, a very major challenge today, this fragility of the being, and then if the external being itself is something that is getting pulled and pushed in different directions based on a very consumer-oriented sense of self, then that, I think, affects the way in which also the personality, it increases the challenges of personal integration for students. So that's another thing I feel, I mean, literally it's like dotted gaps between body, mind, and soul, and a lot of people today, if I were to look at last 25 years and look at, for example, incidents of anxiety and depression in students over these years, or even physical problems like neck pain and shoulder pains, I find that has increased so tremendously, so that's one thing that I found, increasing. And one example of the fact that technology now is at the center of a student identity also is, when I ask them, what is at the center of the identity, a number of people today, and increasingly more and more every year, say it's their cell phones. So, that's the first answer that you would give. So this is an indicator of the change that is happening. Also, I feel our education is, still, especially in the mainstream, still with, within the four walls. It needs to move out. It needs to move out to the critical sites of education, to communities at risk, to protest sites, to social change experimentations. Needs to be grounded. It's one thing. We're just becoming top heavy, just talking about things. A lot of mental froth without it being rooted anywhere. So that's, I think, one very major gap that I see in education. So it needs critical thinking, it needs critical rooting somewhere. So it should be something that is organic, something that links with our own original insight, our own problem solving, the way we look at issues, our location in the world, and what we can specifically, get as our own unique, diverse, unique view as an offering to solve some of the problems that, face us, collective problems that face us today. And also, schools schools need to be cultures of social change. I mean, if the school or the educational or the learning organization cannot somewhere manifest the very things that it is talking about, then it becomes a failure in a sense. For example, issues of hierarchy, power, control. If the school cultures themselves are hierarchical, have a differentiation of teaching and non-teaching staff, teachers and students, parents, they are treated differentially. Then that itself becomes a problem, because we're learning through observation all the time. So that these are school systems need to become non-hierarchical spaces, where as a learning community, it includes, for example, even in learning.
Monica, I would like to come in, because I would like to move. You have brought in so many issues, wide spectrum, and each one is, very, very important, what you have pointed out. And what I'm hearing from all four of you, starting from Vikas, where he presented the two key questions of, the relationship between education and what is the aim of human life and who is the human being. And Heidi bringing in that how the hybrid, even though she's in a hybrid space, the infrastructural demands, and that raises the question, obviously, of what system is the right system, and which Nishi pointed out, it's more the educators who need to change, not so much the education system, because that is not really in our hands. What is in our hands is we ourselves as educators, and which you are also saying that if the college or the school itself, the values it professes to impart, if it is not living up to those values, then there is a gap. And all the other things of the technology and various. My simple question as the next round, because I am also the timekeeper, so I have to move the group on. So as the next round, the issues have come out beautifully from all four of you. Now, you personally, being part of this problem that you face day to day and having the aspiration to do something else, because all four of you have that, how do you bridge this gap personally in your own work, in your day-to-day interaction with students, in your interaction with your colleagues, in your interaction with administration and authorities? So I would like here to begin with Nishi.
I think there are two ways I can think of immediately that, I hope help in some way in bridging the gap. One is, watching over myself, when I'm interacting with children or when I'm interacting with other adults in the school, constantly and relentlessly for, what am I saying? How am I saying it? Where is it coming from? What value is this creating either in the classroom or in my interaction with the adults? So constantly being very aware. And as we know, it's very easy to, justify every action, every thought, every word that we have, but not letting that coming into the way, but constantly being aware of that. I think awareness is the first point for me. Second is that, when I again talk to a lot of teachers, we feel that we need to build a lot of things in our children, like we talk of resilience, we talk of, hard work. We like Monica said, that there are so many things that children are stuck to gadgets and, just simply put like that. But we don't reach anywhere. And so giving enough time in school, we have to move from focus or excessive focus on what we call, fortunately, in a lot of schools now, they don't call curriculum as only English, math, science, social science, but everything is curricular. But excessive focus on academic subjects to values. And it's not a subject, but in our day-to-day work with the students, focus on values. And I think that's very important. So looking at myself.
So sorry, Nishi, I will, because I'm going to pin you down because we are looking for tools. So when you say focus, shift from academic self-observation, yeah, that's in your hands. But moving from academics to values, the school may not allow it. The school wants results, it wants toppers. So how do you move from academics to values?
When I say, I agree with you that it shouldn't be at the cost of results, and it is usually not at the cost of the results. You can get good results along with values, but you can also get good results without values. So that's the choice that we are making. So for example, things like if you're picking up a text in Hindi or English for children to read, what is the kind of text that I'm picking up? What am I doing with it? And am I just getting kids to read that text and do something very non-useful, something that is a waste? Or am I using that text? One is the quality of the text. Other is, am I using that to generate a lot of discussion in my class? What is the result of that? Am I generating into just creativity, problem solving in the class with that text? So it's not that, okay, I'm going to just not do any academic stuff, but my focus is not the text anymore. My focus is, what do I do with it? I remember as a kid, and it still stays with me till now, that when I was in school, and like Anuradha said, I went to this school, Mirambika. It's not that we did not do any mythology or we did not do Ramayana and stuff. We did everything, but we could discuss it out. What Ram did, was that right? We had constant encouragement to think through these things and not take things for granted, not consume them as they came to us. We were constantly analyzing and thinking through it. So when I say value, I think, and this only leads to good results versus
Thank
memorizing.
you. I'll move on to Heidi now. Sorry, Nishi, we have to, yeah, Heidi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anuradha and Nishi. I'll start with the personal, and then I'll share a little bit about me on campus with students, with administration. But really, as I tried to hint at earlier, it circles around the personal for me, because, and what that means is how can I every day, create an intentional space where I invite exploration and collaboration with the depths of my own heart and being. And when I'm talking about depths, I'm not talking about some abstract idea. I'm talking about something grounded in real experience. I think, we use these words, divine, soul, depths, guide, self. They're real experiences. They're not just ideas, and they all have what Rumi calls a God's fragrance. And they also refer to something so experiential and real. Like imagine a friend of yours you thought was out of town or on the other side of the world, and they poke their head around the corner and surprise you. It's that real. So intentionally creating space for stillness and silence, as Monica already shared, and really saying, what is this interiority of experience? What are the multidimensional nuances? How can I increase my own awareness? And how can I nurture a sort of internal I-thou relationship where I'm getting experience, differentiating between like what's Heidi egoic and what's not. And through this, I'm able to develop attention and concentration, and hopefully, that leads to awareness and removal of obstacles that might impact, my senses being sensitive or accurate. And I feel like my own inner work impacts how I show up in the administration. Like I might really react if something is not working out or there's a power dynamic I can feel at play, but through my own practices, I might be able to take pause and not act on that reaction. Breathe in the moment and say, okay, that's a reaction. And then, that pause allows me to show up in that space in a different way, maybe from a more grounded, less emotional place. Because I feel like in my administrative circles, emotion doesn't get listened to, but calmness and reason, people can better listen. So it's still something I'm still navigating. But it's easier with the students. I mean, and the students at CIIS are hungry for it. They've been there. So how can I weave in, even though it might not seem directly linked to the curriculum, how can I weave in free writing and self-reflection activities to get them thinking about multidimensionality, and maybe thinking's a step into becoming less mind-centered, because we're so mind-centered. It's like the mind is the entry point maybe, but then what would it be like to source our consciousness from the heart or from the body, so just creating invitations for students to pause and be silent and self-reflect, and then maybe even allowing them to share, not in a large group, but in a pair share, a dyad, because I think sometimes, especially on Zoom, you say, what do people think? What was your experience? It's like quiet. Nobody wants to unmute and go. So the breakout rooms have been really valuable to make sure everyone can have a voice, even if it's just, I don't get to hear what's going on. But that's where the free writings can be neat too, because then I get to read what people are reflecting on and I get to ask them questions. So I'll pause there.
Thank you. Monica, would you like to come in with what you do to create this space of silence and unhurried?
Yeah, so I completely resonate with Heidi and whatever she said about, holding the silence and consciousness and the calm. And, I always get reminded of the mother's words that, let your aspiration be like a bird of light in front of you, as you go through the day. So I think aspiration and imagination of the day as a projection helps, because if you can do it positively, that sort of also helps to bring positivity in a turnaround, of these.
For
And,
people who may not know, could you elaborate a little bit on what do you mean by aspiration and imagination of the day?
yeah, so it's like taking a moment out, just letting go of whatever are the negatives from previous days, and when you look at a fresh day, starting off anew, making an offering that each thing may go just the way as it is in my, you make a powerful affirmation or an imagination that this is the way it would be, in terms of holding the consciousness, not in terms of exact events, because they are, emergent and much more creative than sometimes you expect, but in terms of quietening and holding that quietness, like a point of quietness within you as you move through the day. So that is something that helps the most. And as far as the students are concerned, even in the pandemic times, I have found that not hurrying and linking with the inside stories of students rather than just what they are, generally used to expressing in a very social kind of an environment. There are, there are social routines and ways of expressing that are there. So going beyond that, through I use sometimes visualization exercises or small activities which can help them get in touch with their own selves and also, express their stories in their own words. So that helps deepen the consciousness and also connect with them at a different level altogether. Sometimes something as simple as that helps you know much more about a person than you otherwise would know, even over a long period of time. And there are these, consciously I've done some little experimentations, especially with trust. Like for example, if a student sends out a communication, where some deadline has been overcome or something, it has been with me to spontaneously make that affirmation to trust and say, okay, whatever is the reason, it's fine, and to move from there. And that's a lot, it has required a lot of self-work from me as well, but it has been amazing, this relational part of the being, because I've always found the moment I have put those forces of trust in motion, it always has surprised me so much, because there is something in that relationship, something that happens that you did not foresee, and there is a positivity in it that sort of comes back to you. So that is something I found tremendously useful. There's also, I think, in not hurrying, just creative breaks, even in the way in which you format a day, for example. So in even structuring of time, I've tried in the pandemic period not to keep just the class timings, but make myself available throughout the day to the students. And sometimes it has taken very interesting formats. For example, there was a day when we all just shared poetry. Somehow, it was a spontaneous day of poetry for all of us, and we shared so much from our being throughout the day. So those kinds of creative breaks, I think, help. And it's also, it's like sharing your being with the student. It's not about just saying, okay, this is the time when I'm available to you. So that also has helped. And also, I think, connect for my own balancing and balancing my own energies. I think connecting with nature, with birds, with butterflies, with feeding the birds, and hugging a tree every day with my little niece. These very little things, but they have kept me grounded, in the world of right now, and also kind of an interconnection that I see with every living being around. And little children's questions, their observations as to, for example, the spontaneous pain as they see even a little plant dying, for example. These help me to sort of keep alive the existential questions, and also, connect with children, older people, and keep alive that innocence and that freshness. So those are some of the tools that I use. And being an academician, I think what I've also tried is to focus on quality of material and not quantity. I think that has helped, because we tend to do so many readings and so much, and we're so top heavy in a sense. And I found that even a little bit can give back to us if we do it with deeper contemplation. And the relational aspect, I think, personally for me, has dominated my being. And I get reminded of, Sri Aurobindo's, a sentence from Sri Aurobindo's Thoughts and Aphorisms. He says, turn all things to honey. That's the law of the divine being. So that sweetness, my aspiration to be able to express that.
Thanks a lot, Monica. That was beautiful. Vikas, we'll go to you now, and then we will open it for everybody to ask questions.
I wanted to share a gap that I'm personally experiencing right now in the ashram school. We are having over time the old guard of teachers who were, say, guided by the mother and part of the ashram school from the inception, who are gradually passing out away and bringing in the new teachers who are generally now taken from the pool of former students who have been part of this education system, who want to give back and be a part of this educational experiment. So on the one hand, we have the teachers who have molded us, who have been beautifully grounded in the integral philosophy of education, and whose life was deeply rooted in the work in the ashram, completely dedicated to that. And on the other hand, we have a new generation of teachers who are coming in, who have grown up in the system, and yet for whom their giving is not like as entire as, say, the old guard that was there earlier. So how do I balance this aspect in the generation of teachers that I'm seeing go away and coming in? The new generation does bring in a lot of freshness in terms of, say, new material curriculum. But can we also help the children to develop the values that were there with the earlier generation of teachers? So this I find to be a gap that I really want to try and see how to bridge it. And given that the last 2-3 years have been pretty much online and getting people to just connect with each other, it has been very difficult to bridge this gap. Technology clearly has just managed to reach out between people, between teachers and students. But between teachers and teachers, I feel that this gap has increased. And I really want to see how to bridge that now that physical classes have begun. So I will leave with that thought.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to, it is almost 9:20. We are scheduled to end by 9:45. So I would like to open it for people who want to ask a question. Please let your questions be totally focused on the topic, and we'll keep very short time for the questions and responses so that we can get more questions rather than just 2 or 3 taking up the time. I hope that is okay. So you can type your question in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question, raise your hand or something like that. I'm going to go to the gallery view now. Yes, please. So who would like to begin? Comments everybody can see in the chat box. Is there a question? Okay. Bridge Kothari ji is asking, are you asking to somebody special, Bridge Kothari ji, or can anybody answer? Can you talk about a specific value and how you taught it? Is the question addressed anybody? Okay. So who would like to take that up? Teaching a specific value and how it was done.
Can I try?
Yes,
Anuradha
please,
ji?
Vikas, go ahead.
So since physical education has been a very important part of our growth here, I wanted to take an example in this particular domain. So since childhood, generally our coaches have always encouraged us to try and progress and try and exceed what we had achieved in the previous years. And the focus has been so much on trying to improve on what one had achieved physically that it created a lot of, in some sense, pressure. So what I tried to inculcate in the children is that there are so many factors that affect your performance on a given day that why don't you try to offer the best effort of the day to your highest aspiration, rather than trying to improve and try and exceed yourself and create that kind of a pressure. So this is a value I try to share with my students through my own experience in participation in sports, and how much it created a calmness in the way I participated in my physical education. So that is the value I shared with my students.
Thank you, Vikas. The next question is, at what age can consciousness studies be introduced? Define consciousness studies as you like. So I would like one of the other three to take it up. Nishi, there's a question coming for you. So let Heidi or Monica take this up. Consciousness studies. Any particular age?
Yeah, maybe. So for me, I think since consciousness is a characteristic of the inner being, of course, it also expresses at all levels. It's a hierarchy, and it's there from material to the, all levels of the universe are imbued with consciousness. So there's no particular age for consciousness studies to begin, because we are conscious beings, and there needs to be a creation of an environment that is psychic, that is, imbued with consciousness, and all of us have that within us. So it is no particular age at which it needs to be, to begin with that. So even little children, in the way in which they look at flowers, the world, pain, suffering, can have consciousness. For example, my little niece, when she looks at the first, ants, and say they're beautiful, and I don't tell her the opposite. She keeps looking at them as beautiful, creatures. So it's a way of engaging with the world as as the child sees it, and to be able to not put barriers in it, and to expand it as much as possible. And consciousness is a fundamental thing. It's Swam Prakash. So it's as you said, what is consciousness studies? So it's that light that we have within, and to be able to connect with that light so that we become self-illumined beings, that would be the fundamental of consciousness studies.
Thanks, Monica. Nishi, the question is for you. What is the way forward for educators with bringing out the best in students who have undergone immense loss, emotional, social learning in the past 2 years?
Yeah, so I think now the children are coming to school, we really thought of it, that what is it that they should be doing in school? Uh, uh, and what I thought would be really useful, and we decided on that. Two things the children have missed out a lot on is, one is just interaction with their peers, playing, fighting, eating together, borrowing things, just simple stuff, and interaction with nature. And those are the two things that I think should take priority over anything else, because while lots can happen on Zooms and MS Teams, this authentic interaction and going out in the nature and stuff cannot happen. So for example, yesterday was the bird watchers day, and we took full advantage of that and went out into the fields, counted the number of pigeons we see and the kinds of birds that we saw, took it to the art class, intent taking it to the math class, but just connecting a lot to the world around and creating opportunities to, like Heidi shared that, even Zoom rooms were great, but now is the time when we can also do pair work and small group work. And, and I realize children are not used to of looking at each other and talking. There's a lot of parallel talk happening with young kids. We have lost the habit of listening to each other, waiting for our turn, making that connect. So I would spend a lot of time in conversations, listening to kids and providing opportunities for them to talk to each other.
Thanks, Nishi. I'm moving on to the next question. Vatsala is asking, in name of choice making, how can one ensure that the child does not stray from the path of truth and non-violence? Who would like to take this up?
Shall I do that?
Please go ahead. Or Heidi, I think, was stepping in.
Okay, Heidi.
Any
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
please,
you.
Heidi. Please.
It's more from my own experience of life. I'm not an early childhood educator, but it's almost like my first answer was, you can't. Because that's the evolution of consciousness, right? Sometimes you have to go the way you're not going to get to the way you're actually going. It's hard for people who care about people to watch sometimes, but you can always be a presence there, a steady presence there for them, and guide them as you can.
Questions coming in from the YouTube also. Before I go to the next question in this box, I will take up a couple of questions from the YouTube. So Tenzin is asking, okay, oh, it's for Heidi anyway, let's take it. How do you see problem posing education? How can we teach values through this?
I think that goes back to something Monica shared at the beginning, like how do we get out of talking about things and back on the ground into the places where we need to be to actually have some real world thinking and action to be a part of the educational process. That way, when students finish college, for example, they don't get out there and say, now what do I do? I think the problem posing education is a specific lineage from Paulo Freire, and it's a way to look at life critically, not like, oh, this is bad, but like, what am I not seeing? And always having this attitude of curiosity and examining power dynamics and moving in a direction for inclusion and equity across the board. How do we do that? To teach values is a great question. I can share one example, like from my classrooms, and it's not necessarily, I wouldn't classify it as a problem, but as a way at the outset of a class to try to highlight the value of connection and relationality in the learning process, to start with the group to co-create some shared agreements, like what are we all going to commit to when we come to this space together. And that way, if something does arise or something happens in the class, like a problem, we can kind of go back to our shared agreements and values for relating and being human together as a basis to repair anything that might have happened. And I would venture even to say that cultivating that kind of way of being in the learning space would trickle into how people are in the world. I can hope, at least. So hopefully that answers. I'd love it if any of other panelists or educators want to chime in on that one.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm moving on to the next question. Sorry, I have to. Okay, so Poonam is asking, why are we, I don't know if that's a question, Poonam, why are we in a hurry to make our children perfectionists, to be good in everything? And there is another, Anthony has put in a comment, the focus on values appears to be mired in perennialism and essentialism. And then there is the lure of progressivism, not unlike Vikasji's dilemma of the past and present mindset of teachers. Would love to hear anyone who chooses to respond. So, anybody? I've read out these two comments. Heidi, you are on mute.
I'm just sorry rereading it to myself.
Vikas, Nishi, anybody wants to go?
Regarding the perfectionist question, I think the focus should be more on just creating opportunities for progress rather than situations for comparison, situations of collaboration and mutual growth rather than competition. So that's what removes the aspect of trying to reach that kind of a perfectionist mindset out of the equation.
Thank you. Anybody wants to add anything to the comment by Anthony? I don't know whether that is something he's wanting, and he just wants to know the views. Maybe we can come back to that later. I would go ahead to the next question. How can we keep a balance? Shobhana is asking, how can we keep a balance between life education and the education for making a living? Nishi, why don't you go ahead with this? How can we keep a balance between life education and the education for making a living?
Yeah, actually, I've just read this question 2-3 times, and for me, it's not a balance actually. But if we focus enough on life education, which for me means, making the most of education, children doing well, what they're doing in school, they're enjoying, they're really good at what they're learning. I think it leads to making a living out of it. If they understand what is their passion and they work on it, in fact, they make a better living out of it versus, doing a half-hearted job. So if we just focus on learning in its sense, that which is joyful, I think it should lead to that, and not a conflict between, do I do this or do I teach for making a living?
Okay. Thank you, Nishi. Lots of questions are coming in, so I'm wondering whether to pause, like Monica might say, Anuradha is too much in a hurry. That's what I was warning about. No space to pause. Okay, anyway, I will go ahead. So on the YouTube, I'm jumping to YouTube now. Jayashri had asked, how do we explain consciousness and its growth to young adults? Do you use any particular method or share from Sri Aurobindo and the mother's writings? I think so in some way, Monica had touched upon this response. Would somebody else like to add anything to it?
I wanted to share a mirror experiment that I try with the children. So there's a very beautiful commentary of the mother on one of Sri Aurobindo's aphorisms, where she asks us to view life as a mirror. Whatever happens around us, if we are in some ways disturbed or shocked by what is happening around us, it means that there is some sort of a reflection of that within ourselves. And if we can correct that within ourselves, then there's a greater chance that it will resolve itself outside. So stepping back is a movement of consciousness that I share with the children as a tool to deal with their day-to-day problems.
Thank you, Vikas. Okay, back to YouTube only. Sonam Wangdu is asking, since one can't know and understand oneself completely, how then can a teacher direct a student consciousness and help evolve the students? And I'm reading Dr. Preeti Jain's comment also here because I feel they are related. I don't want my children to be perfect. I too am not perfect. It's better if we keep a window of learning open and learn. So, yeah, so please go ahead. Who would like to go ahead?
I think if student and teacher look at these deeper aspects as co-learning opportunities rather than teacher telling to the student to do, that would itself create the kind of balance we are looking for in terms of who's teaching whom. If both are learning together, that's what would be the way forward, I would think. A co-learning environment.
Yeah, I would also like to highlight what almost all of you said in the first round, that it is the change begins with oneself. It's the educator. It's that self-observation. And the tools also which you shared, it was all about observing oneself as aspiring, imagining, listening to the heart, all the practices which begin with oneself. And that comes a complete circle with what you are saying, Vikas, of being a co-learner rather than wanting to teach the other or perfect the other. So just highlighting that. Thank you. We have Sharbani asking, being a teacher in a mainstream school, I find most people are unaware about values and consciousness in education in a classroom. Even the school administration is oblivious of it, how to handle it. So this would be a question for somebody working in the mainstream. So either, and as she's asking about school, Sharbani was earlier teaching in Mirambika, you know. So Nishi, would you like to take this up, please?
Yeah. So having worked with hundreds of schools, I mean, it may just sound like a very pessimistic comment, but I think these things flow from the top. If the management doesn't value it enough, I could do something about it in my own individual class with 25, 30 children. And I think that's the best that I can. But if I want to bring a change at a school level, then I have to start not with the children, but with the management. And so it's just, I would find it really hard to work in a school where I want to do something and the management wasn't aligned to it. So that's what my very short response would be.
Monica, would you also like to step in here, please? As you're also working in the mainstream.
Yes, I think the issue of values is a sticky issue, you know, because often, as you know, there's a danger of becoming top down in values. And the moment it comes to us in prepackaged sort of, you know, little package, it becomes already mechanical, you know, for students to sort of, you know, take in. So I think it's a question as much as possible of quietening, calming, you know, deep listening. I think the deepest that you listen, the more you also, you know, in a sense, in an observational sense, you know, give that sense to the other person that he's being totally listened to. And it's also, you know, as Heidi used the word, fragrance of the being that sort of jumps from one person to the other. I think that's the best way with values. You know, the moment we say, I'm going to teach you this value, I'm afraid it becomes top down and essentialized.
Yeah, thank you. Heidi has also typed in Heidi, you're multitasking, I see. She's also typed in a response on the YouTube for this. Find other faculty and students and start there. You are not alone. Host a reading group where you select readings to dialogue about consciousness and value-based education. And of course, I would like to throw a spanner in the works and say, can values be really taught? And should they be taught? That's another question, but that's not for discussion. I'm just raising that question. Okay, so Shweta is saying, can you suggest a few suggestions to raise children with more resilience? And that's one trait which really is missing in children nowadays. And the last question I'm reading out from Lopa, how is spiritual education imparted right now in your institutions? How about emotional education? So these two questions we'll take as last because we have only 5 minutes left. So anybody who wants to go for any of these questions? Resilience, making children resilient, and spiritual education.
I think stories are a wonderful tool when we talk of spiritual education and when we talk of emotional education. Children, as we know, relate really well to them. So picking up stories and working our way through them, and there are lots available, and I think children really enjoy. And there's so many different ways of telling a story. So I would use stories for, in fact, even values, if they could be taught to teach spiritual and emotional education.
Also, if I want to comment, I think for teaching resilience, what I have, noticed is just, questioning the boundaries of the being. That is, going beyond our comfort level, whether it is, in terms of interacting with persons around us, breaking stereotypes, moving beyond resistances to people we haven't met, talked to, these kinds of things help build our resilience. Because we have to see within our being where the barrier is. There is also a gentler, rather than saying that resilience has to be built with, hammering the being. I think there is a gentler way to sort of, build resilience, and that is also through. In a sense, I think that's the purpose of education, to open out those new sort of parts in your being, that create those new cells through which you can think afresh, to sort of heighten consciousness and use gently. So, yeah.
Thanks, Monica. A lot of sweetness, honey, huh? You are dripping with honey. Okay. Right.
Can I come in?
Yeah, who's that, please?
Hi, my name is Bharat.
Yeah, please go ahead.
For the resilience part, I feel I think kids needs to move more outdoors. Games and sports can be a great tool, I feel, because as an athlete, I feel we need more avenues and more opportunities for kids to get outdoors and engage in sports, team sports or individual sports, because I think sports really teaches those values and really gives you that to get over the defeats and losses, and also calm, maintain your emotions when you win. So I think, to me, games and sports is what comes to my mind, and I feel that's something that I see not a lot of kids are participating, or the ecosystem is not really supporting. Of course, with the pandemic, it's understandable, but I feel if we can all take that initiative and create that possibilities and opportunities for kids to get out, move, play, get active, that can be a great possibility, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. When I looked at the people who had registered, we have actually quite a powerful gathering. And it is, unfortunately, we can't ask everybody to speak with the time and all, but there are lots of people who have very, very, years of experience in education. And I'm sure they could share a lot of insights with us, but I would like to end here, unfortunately, and thank all of you. I found the discussion fascinating with the wide range from working with little children to working with college students and administration and colleagues. And the point that has been again and again being emphasized is starting with oneself and going as deep, becoming gentle and calm and sweet and enjoying nature and enjoying life and sharing of your being and creating spaces of calmness and all. I think beautiful points have come across, and I want to thank all of you for such a lovely sharing. And thank you, the audience, also for such beautiful questions which helped bring out greater depths from the panelists. So I would like to end here right on dot, 9:45. Good. Thank you, and hope to see you again in 2 months' time or earlier. Thanks a lot. Namaste.